My name is Gina Fitzpatrick, and I'm the President and CEO of the Paso Robles Chamber of Commerce. I'm really excited to have everybody joining us here today. Today we have a special program. We're talking about business health and personal wellness. It's really important during this time. Surviving and thriving COVID-19 is a challenge that we're all facing right now. So we wanted to bring this to you as a additional piece to our overall education series with everything that we're working with right now in our business community, and folks that are possibly out in the business community and shopping in our retail stores and our restaurants is something that they've done on a consistent and everyday basis, a weekly basis, and having that change in their life is not easy to manage. So we want to talk about all of that today. I'm excited to bring to you Kathy Markov. Kathy is a master trainer. She's worked with established businesses in developing their upcoming leaders. She is a well-known meeting facilitator. She's actually a group coach, and she works with groups on strategic planning. It's really funny. Kathy and I worked together, must have been 15 years ago at least, when I was at a community bank, Heritage Oaks Bank, as a branch manager. It seems like forever ago now. So I've known Kathy for a long, long time. And then we also have with us today Carrie Asuncion. She's with Keys to Empowerment, and she's the Chief Possibility Officer is her title right now. So she works with entrepreneurs and small businesses all throughout the United States to help them scale and pivot their businesses and helping to create profitability, especially during this time. So with that, without further ado, I'm also going to just do one housekeeping item, and that's if you have a question during the program, please use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen as opposed to the chat. It's easier for all of us to be able to read the Q&A, and then our panelists will be able to respond to you at some point during the presentation and potentially at the end of the program. So thank you, and with that, we will get started. Kathy, please begin.
Such a pleasure to be here with you, Gina. Thank you so much to the Paso Robles Chamber of Commerce for inviting myself and Carrie to present to you today. And I see so many friends on the line, and I just am honored to be here with you. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll start, and then we'll move on to Carrie. So wow, this is what we're talking about today: surviving and thriving in the time of COVID-19. What we're hoping you get out of this is strategies for coping with anxiety to keep focused and positive, and to learn to be flexible with your business plan in this truly unpredictable time. So let's look at this. Did any of us ever expect that this is where we would be when you were developing your plans for 2020 or New Year's resolution, and then the world changed? A friend of mine sent me this, and I thought that that kind of summarizes some of my feelings with regard to what's going on. And it's been a very interesting past, really, 6 weeks. So in this presentation, we need to be realistic, but we also want to be optimistic. And so here is a quote that I really love. It says, "The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails." So this is time for us as leaders to really be flexible and have the clarity on what is possible now and how the world may be changing as this really catastrophe unfolds. This is what it means for us to adjust the sails, to pivot, as Carrie says. Life will never be the same, but that does not mean that it will be worse. Without a doubt, it will be different. So we just need to prepare ourselves and be realistic about that. We need to brace ourselves for waves of coronavirus infection. In the study of pandemics and epidemics, not just the one 100 years ago, but there have been epidemics that maybe didn't touch our shores, but they come in waves. Social distancing does succeed to slow the contagion, but a pandemic is like really an oil tanker. It is very slow to change and move and slow down. So the virus is very resilient. And we truly, if we listen to the experts, we're probably going to be living with this for the next 18 months to 2 years. So this is a paradigm shift. Our old ways are not going to work anymore, and they're not going to open the new door that this pandemic presents. There was a psychologist, his name is Dean Given, and he wrote this. He said, we are aiming too low if we're thinking, how can I survive this? We want to shoot higher than survival to pursue building our resilience, preparing us for future challenges in our life that will come. Look, you've been through big life-changing things before. This is another one. The good news, we're all going through it together. If you think back on some of the biggest challenges in your life, I know in my life, I've learned so much from those things that if we can approach it that way, I think that we are in a better place. So this is a quote out of an article by a man that I truly admire. His name is Robert Lewin. He used to be the SLO fire chief, and he was one of the leaders that worked on recovery for the Montecito debris flows a couple of years ago. He and his partner have, who was the police chief, Garrett Olson, they started a company called Resolute Associates. And he wrote a wonderful article that talks about what we need to be able to do as leaders during this pandemic. And I'm going to read you the quote. And if you write me, and at the end, I'll give contact information for both myself and Carrie, I'll be able to send you the link to this article. But he says, this is the moment when leaders must adapt our normal business as usual planning and decision making to an emergency decision and planning process. Moving to this emergency planning and decision process will make the difference between a COVID-19 emergency response that is flat-footed and reactive to one that is nimble and responsive. And really, this is what the moment is asking us to do, is not to be reactive, not to make gut reactions. And I'm the realist here. I'm going to talk a little bit about a few dangers in this environment, but we do need to be nimble and responsive. So there's a lot of things you can do, but you need to be able to evaluate and decide truly what will you do. And I'm an HR professional, and when I put on my HR strategist hat, if I were the HR strategist for your organization, for your business, this is what I would say. Whatever you do, get expert advice specifically to your business and organization on all financial and HR decisions. Your job right now should be to mitigate any risks associated with the decisions that you make. So it's important to be cautious on taking on debt that you may not be able to pay off. Be very careful how you treat your employees. Make all commitments or arrangements with your employees formal. I mean, we fall back on some of those basic HR premises. You do need agreements in writing and policies for remote employees and that kind of thing. If you haven't done it, it's not too late to do it. You can contact me. I have some templates. I have been sitting for the last 6 weeks every couple of days on HR webinars like this with attorneys, and every single one of them outlines that as this thing carries on, and certainly at the end, there's going to be a flood of litigation that is aimed at employers who maybe completely unintentionally, but maybe broke some laws or did something that put people in harm's way that now they may be held accountable for. And I don't want that to happen to you. So this is what I would say. We've got an overflow of information. Go to the source, go to the CDC, go to OSHA. These are the primary organizations that all have resources for businesses. This is really, really important. Follow the guidance by the CDC for what kinds of things that you need to have. You know, only 14% of Americans want to ease social distancing. I know we see in the press that everybody's clamoring to get back to work, but really only 14% of Americans want to ease social distancing. And these aren't just your employees, they are also your customers. So I just got off of a program I was watching where in Georgia, which is opening up today, yeah, maybe they're opening the hair salons and the nail salons and the massage parlors and the gyms, but nobody's going. So this is important for us to think about and really lowering our mitigating any kind of risk and ensuring that we're developing trust in our employees and in our clients, that we are taking all precautions to keep them safe and healthy. So yes, this is a very difficult time. The Gallup organization reports that the future new normal is still developing, and people are really overwhelmed with information and misinformation. So look at your sources well. This is an article that I took note of. So I have experienced quite a bit of grief in my life, family members, etc. And the first couple of weeks, I knew that I was not really myself. And I realized, my goodness, I am grieving again. This experience brought up a lot of the emotions and feelings that I had when I was in deep grief. So I do believe that we are all collectively grieving. And there's many ways to look at grief. And I actually love this in the context of what we're experiencing in business. So grief is not just the loss of a person or a beloved companion animal or that type of thing. Loss is also the loss of a dream, loss of a routine, the loss of connection with other people. We're all grieving the loss of the things that we are experiencing here. And I believe that the last 6 weeks have really been about shock. We've been in shock. And with the things that we're seeing coming up in the last week, 10 days, we see on a national scale, there's a lot of protest. But this is a time for real caution. You want to be clear, again, that the decisions you're making today are thinking in the future, mitigating any kind of risk. What we really need to do is get out of this sense of disorganization in our heads, get reorganized so that we can begin to stabilize our organization, stabilize our lives, move to recovery, and then to rebuild. So I'm going to show or tell you my perspective on, it's not just viruses that go viral, but this interview with Anderson Cooper that happened a couple of days ago with the mayor of Las Vegas. And there's lots of things that are said about that. But I look at things through the lens of an HR professional. And there was a snippet of the transcript that I pulled out for you. So Anderson Cooper asked the mayor of Las Vegas, how do you do social distancing in a casino? And the mayor of Las Vegas said, well, I don't know. That's up to them to figure it out. It's their job. Well, for me in HR, that just makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, because this mayor is not the first elected official that I have perceived as shifting the liability to the employers. So we need to be very cautious here. Even if, like in Georgia, they're saying open up, open up. If you look a little deeper, my personal belief is that that has to do with Georgia not wanting to pay unemployment insurance, and they can deny that if the businesses are open. But who's going to take the liability for getting people sick in those businesses? The employer will carry that burden. So that's not to frighten you. I'm the realist. What I'm asking and hope for you is that you really plan well any kind of reopening that you do, and that you're cautious. There's good information out there. If you need help identifying resources for you, I'm happy to share that. This is going to be a really long road back to normal if we ever get to normal. You want to be sure that you're keeping your employees and your customers safe and meeting their needs at this time. So this is when we really do need to be flexible and be fair, and we need to think clearly. I love this quote. It says, it's not that you can stop the loss from occurring, it's that your thoughts change everything that comes after the loss. And this is what we need to do. We need to change our thinking. It is not business as usual, and it's not going to be for a long time, and we will find a new normal. But right now, we need to keep our wits about us, because our minds are really like this. We are disorganized. What we're experiencing truly is a toxic mix between grief and ambiguity. We don't know what's going to happen. And this ambiguity mixed with grief, creates anxiety. We have to break the cycle of anxiety. We need to make good decisions. We need to reorganize. We really need to Marie Kondo our mind. Consider a low information diet. Don't be sitting on the news all the time. Pick designated times that you allow yourself to get updates. Look, if they find a vaccine and a cure, people will be screaming it from the mountaintops. You don't need to be watching the news all the time when you have the opportunity to create the world that comes next. Get back to basics. And what I mean by that is your business basics, which I'm going to cover in a minute, and develop trust in yourself to know that you can do this. You've done this before, you can do it again, but you got to be like, on the airplane. You got to put your oxygen mask on first. So another quote I love, when we face the worst that can happen in any situation, we grow. When circumstances are at their worst, we can find our best. And that's the challenge here, that you can, in this really unprecedented situation, find your best. Gilda Radner, one of my famous comedians, and this great quote, and she saw ambiguity as delicious. What can we do to really have comfort with ambiguity, if not find it delicious, but to have comfort? Tony Robbins says the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of ambiguity you can comfortably tolerate. What does that mean? How comfortable are you with ambiguity? How can you become calm and comfortable? Situation that, by the way, you can't control, you can't change, but in that sense of comfort, you can develop better solutions and make sure that you're positioning yourself for success in the future. This is a quote that I just love. It says, "The best journeys answer questions that in the beginning you didn't even think to ask." And I know for me, this experience has caused me to ask a lot of questions that I never thought to ask either. So here's the opportunity. This is truly a global situation. Humanity has never been united around one common foe in the way that it is now. And our communication networks enable us to communicate with everybody around the globe. This morning at 4:30, I got on a conference call with a group that I'm part of for group peer coaching. And there were people on the line from China, from Malaysia, from Singapore, from France, from Romania, from all over the world. This is a fantastic opportunity. And how can you learn to take advantage of that? This is a mantra that I love in my life. It says, believe that something wonderful is about to happen. So I give that to you to remind you that many of us, we've done this before. My business completely collapsed in 2008 at the recession. Completely gone. And basically a couple weeks ago, the same thing happened again. But you know what? After 2008, I stopped, hibernated a little bit, regrouped. I did get a full-time job, but I reinvented this business and it's 10 times better and more profitable than it was before. So I'm feeling like, well, I'm resilient. I can do whatever it takes and reinvent in the new world on the other side of this. This can be exciting. You know, it's often said, and Einstein said it too, that, there are opportunities in difficulty. So I'm going to share with you from our local community some examples of people who've been able to pivot. Now, I don't tell you this to make you feel bad or to make you feel like, oh, I should be doing something different. That these people were either, they're just positioned correctly or had the opportunities that presented themselves and were able to organize their thoughts and have clarity and make it happen. So look, here are companies in SLO County. This is out of the paper from Wednesday. These companies are all hiring. Is there something you could do to help support them? And I know I've got some dear friends from the workforce system on the line. These are places that the workforce system can support now. Can you provide any other kind of services? Daniels Woodland. My kids went to school with the Daniels kids. I love their story, how they built these really high-end, extraordinary tree houses and animations for amusement parks around the world. Do you know what they're doing now? They are manufacturing protective gowns. This is the floor of the manufacturing plant now. They pulled this off in less than 10 days. They saw the opportunity, they made it happen. Marjoram, this is one of my clients in Santa Barbara County, and I know that other of the beautiful Paso Robles wineries are doing this too. But Marjoram, within less than a week, they had developed a system to hand deliver wine to anybody within a certain radius. It was like from Ventura up to Paso Robles, they would hand deliver wine to people. So, hey, they found a different way to present it. This is a great story. A friend told me they had a client who was an upholsterer. Well, no one was bringing their couches and their chairs to get upholstered, but they had a sewing machine, and within a couple days, they found a niche market creating masks for children and selling them on the internet. They're making more money than they were as an upholsterer. This was out of the paper this morning. Local graphic designer pivots to make plexiglass, protective plexiglass. This is from the Tribune. So here you go. You can't get stuck in the old ways. We need to embrace the new ways. Here are the trends. Social distancing is here for a while. The economic downturn does provide opportunities for some organizations, and the well-being of organizations, families, and individuals are really needed. What can you provide? The trends are global, but you've got to build trust locally with your customers, and we need to have patience. It might take time to really put all this together. So we go back to the basics. What's your mission, vision, and values, and how can those be applied to being of service to your community here? A SWOT analysis. Hey, it's the gold standard, tried and true. Have you done one since this has happened? Are you ready to do one? I'm happy to share any of my resources for that. Develop strategy, then set some SMART-er goals. So everyone knows specific, measurable, realistic, and time-bound. But I like to think of the A as agreed upon, and particularly in this time. You may be anxious to open up your business, but if your employees don't feel comfortable and don't agree to come back, or your customers don't agree that they feel comfortable and want to come back, you're going to get nowhere. Getting that agreement builds the trust that's going to be necessary to go forward. So the ER part of this is contingency plans. If then, if we get orders that we can open up, then what guidance from the CDC and OSHA can help me prepare the workplace to be totally safe? If we don't open up, then how can I present my services to the world in a different way? If I'm tired and exhausted, then I'm going to rest because I can't think clearly unless I take care of me first. So these are the kind of things you need to be thinking about, all within the analysis of what is the political, economic, social, technological, and legal environment that's happening. You're going to need several plans, a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and feel comfortable that you can be nimble and you can move in either direction. You're not going to be perfect at this, and you never have been. Life is a series of successes and failures, and that's okay. Be graceful with yourself and be kind to yourself. Make sure that you sleep, that you eat, that you exercise. You know, I've been doing this so long, teaching classes in stress management, and people are, I have too much to do. Well, now maybe this is the time, depending on what your business is doing, to be kind to yourself. So I love this quote. Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it's done. Isn't that true? And every time I think of Nelson Mandela, I think of that beautiful smile. He always had that smile. But you know, this man spent 27 years alone in prison. And when he came out, he was ready to change the world. And we can spend a few months at home and we can emerge ready to take on the world in a way that we are meant to be. So there's nothing quite as intense, the moment of clarity, when you suddenly see what's really possible for you. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, who is going to jump on this idea and just take it to the next level. So thank you.
So thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Gina, and all of you Paso Robles Chamber members. It's great to be on the call today. We had so much fun putting this together for all of you. And I'm just going to take a little bit of a different slant on the work that we've been doing. And I'm blending that background as a human resource executive with a body-based psychotherapy practice that I've been using with my business coaching clients to begin to help them to navigate these changing times, to navigate change altogether, but to create a greater sense of ease as they navigate the changes. So we're truly living in unprecedented times. And I just want to say, I believe that we all have what it takes to navigate this. Like Kathy was saying, you know, we've been around the block here, right? I've been through the tech bubble, the downturn, the financial downturn in 2008. We've dealt with 9/11. We've all dealt with personal losses. It's a time for us to begin to realize that we have many of the tools already built up as business owners to begin to pivot. But we have to deal with some of the bottom line issues. And if you could, please, there you go. So this is important for you to know, both as you're working with your clients as well as your own internal process, is asking yourself, okay, if it goes from the bottom up, in order, some of you may have seen this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In order for people to begin to think themselves out of a box, they need to be able to have their basic needs taken care of, which are the physiological, you know, that ability to have rest and food and shelter, and then also safety. This is like a lot of what we're dealing with nowadays, is the ability for people, your employees, your clients, to feel a greater level of health and safety. And then belongingness, that's the connection issue that we might be addressing right now too, or lack of interconnection. And then we can begin to talk with the psychological needs of esteem and self-actualization. But really, we need to be able to meet clients where they're at, which is those basic needs. So if you can just flip it to the next. And so in order for us to begin to think correctly, because I began working with, I think that Gina was mentioning this earlier, I've been working with clients across the United States, small to mid-sized companies, and helping them to design plans and actually move forward on plans that help them to scale their businesses. Well, we could create a plan, but if their head isn't screwed on correctly because they're dealing with stages of grief, which is, Kathy was mentioning this earlier, unless we're able to acknowledge that we are going through this and that maybe some of our clients are going through this or employees are going through this, then we're just missing the ball, really. So in some of these states of grief are, I'll just start from the left to right, you know, denial. So what does that maybe look like? Even as we're dealing with grief and in that sense of fear of uncertainty, right? Can we all relate to that one, about that fear of economic downturn, loss of connection? So it's important for us to acknowledge these states so that we don't become paralyzed or stuck. So once again, denial. So we're looking at, oh, that won't affect us. You know, we can deal with this. It's also denial or bargaining rather. If I social distance, we're seeing some of this in our political climate. Well, if we social distance for 2 weeks, everything's going to be right. All right. Okay. You know, so in other words, you're trying to make everything just go away. And I just want to say also, these are mechanisms that let's call it your brain goes into lockdown. Your primitive mind begins to go into lockdown and begin to look for the saber-toothed tiger and take us out if we don't deal with some of these issues. And so there's the deal of just sadness or the depression. Well, we don't know if it's ever going to end. And it's that feeling of, oh, you know, maybe desperation. I've been finding myself and my clients going through like waves of this. So acknowledging it and acceptance, realizing that we're dealing with a new normal. We're not going to be able to do business like we did even a month and a half ago, which is really crazy to think. And so figuring it out, and so the next part of that is acceptance, that ability for us to figure out what's our new normal and to continue to pivot as we go along, because if we can figure it out today and it's going to be completely different tomorrow. And there's the next step, which I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's not on the slide, but they're finding that finding meaning in the process of grief is also equally important. And so I know that a lot of my clients are actually realizing that this is a time for us to be, rather than being transactional in our businesses, is to be relational, and ultimately for us to be transformational, for us to be able to see that this is a transformative time. It's asking for us to step up to a new level of doing business. So before we get too far into the rest of it, I just want to provide you with an opportunity for you to, what I call, screw your head back on, so that you can begin to think clearly, think more creatively. And this, it's a process called courtesy. So play with me here. I can't see you on the other line, but play with me here. It's going to take both hands, one hand fingers together, the other hand open. And you're going to take this hand that's with the closed, and so you're going to go over the top of your head, and I'm going to guide you through the process, and then the side of your head. Basically what we're doing is we're bringing our brain back online, our nervous system back online, so that we can begin to think clearly, and it helps, it has a double whammy. It keeps our immunity up because our nervous system is the CEO of our immunity system. So fingers together on back of your head. We're going to take a deep breath in, belly breath, and heart space. And top of your head, deep breath, and heart space. Next one, we're going to put it right above the ridge on the back of your head. Top of your head, deep breath in, and heart space. And while we're taking those deep belly breaths, we're basically telling our brain, hello, we're calming down. We no longer need to run away from that saber-toothed tiger, that we're present, because really you can't think of anything else while you're doing this. And then this corner of your head, like if you were wearing a yarmulke, deep breath in, belly breath, like a baby breathing, and heart space. This is a body of work called Body Talk, one of the ways in which I help clients to release limiting beliefs in heart space and basically come to their true power in their business. Top of your head, that's where you've been tapping, that's okay. Deep breath in, and heart space. And deep breath in, and heart space. So if you've had a difficult day, or if you just want to do it preventatively, I do this before I speak sometimes. And then what I call the oh my goodness position right here at the front of your brain. So you're bringing your frontal cortex back online, and deep breath out, letting it go, letting go of any concern. Deep breath in, and heart space. Side of your brain, which is two hands, fingers together. Deep breath in. And top of your head, it's like chewing bubble gum and talking at the same time. There you go. And once again, side of your head. And top of your head, and heart space. So you may begin to notice that your body may have calmed down. I've actually done this with groups of people before, like a group of 50 women that I'm speaking to. And you can feel the hush that comes over a room as people begin to come back into their bodies. So we're going to take you through a process where you can begin. I'm going to invite you to take out a piece of paper, something to write with. And Kathy, if you can take us to the next slide. We're going to begin to acknowledge our feelings first. We've already began to talk about the stages of grief. So you might be experiencing some of that, maybe suffering from overwhelm. I'm going to take you through a process that goes through the spiral. That means into the outside world, into your inner world, so that you can go back out into the world and have more sense of clarity. And well, I call it chaos to clarity. So you get a greater sense of calm, and you know what your next actions items are, and how you can stand in this world as a business owner, being very clear about what your next step is to do. So asking yourself, where am I today? And you may even want to ask your team this when you start, like to do a check-in. Are you suffering from overwhelm, frustration? Are you feeling stuck or isolated? I've been finding this is a tremendously creative time right now. And yes, I get frustrated with technology, and that's okay. I hire somebody to help with that. And then let's look at item number 2. So what is your biggest challenge? And as you think, when I say your biggest challenge, it's really looking at what is your biggest limiting factor, that if you weren't to deal with this issue, it's really going to impact your ability to move forward. And what I find, remember that Maslow's hierarchy, we're dealing with, a lot of my clients are needing to financially get themselves stable first, which look at their expenses and look at their cash flow and possibly apply for SBA loans. So what is one of your biggest challenges that if you don't address, that you're not going to be able to move your company forward? So it may be pivoting your vision, it may be embracing technology, or holding your employees accountable while we're at this shelter in place and you're not able to be cohabitating with them. Or maybe it's keeping your employees safe. So what is your biggest challenge right now? Then we're going to go up to number 3, what is the cost of not dealing with that issue? And I can just tell you that if this is really the transformative question, that if you are not willing to deal with the issue, it may take your business out. I'm going to share with you what an example of somebody who was telling me about, they have a cleaning company, and it was basically prohibitive for them to be going out and continuing to do business as they were doing it before, both for the safety of their employees as well as the safety, clients were feeling a little bit freaked out about having them there. So as a result of that, they geared up very quickly and they were able to purchase hazmat suits, and they're able to use high temperature heating equipment so they can begin to help their clients to feel a greater sense of safety and health and wellness. So I think that's a great example of a company that said, we can do it better. And so then number 4 is, what do I want to create? So, you may have been doing your business for a very long time, and yet you're saying, okay, well, it's worked up until now. Well, these are different times. And it's basically asking you to do business in a different way. So you may have been worried about a sales decline, or safety, like that client I was telling you about, or market share, like, am I really going to be the preeminent provider of this service? So you get to begin to ask yourself, what is it I want to create so I can serve my clients at the highest level, at a level that they know that they need, because remember that hierarchy again. And so I'm going to give an example of 2 healthcare practitioners that up until now were not using online services. So there's something called telemedicine, which you can use a service called Doxy, which is a HIPAA compliant. It's a service like this where you can do an interface with somebody. It's a one-on-one service. And it accepts online payments, and it helps you with scheduling, et cetera. So there's a lot of different features for it. Well, and I was working with a physical therapist the other day where she was like, I'm not really sure if I can actually translate my business into something that's online. And we began to realize, oh my God, it's powerful. Like, I was struggling with pain. And anyway, she was able to do this because she's realizing this is what she needs to be able to do. And the fact is, in the past, we've just had maybe a geographical area that we were serving, but with this, we have an opportunity. Yes, we have an opportunity for us to begin to look at our businesses in a larger scope. So it's a win-win. And then number 5, which is down towards the bottom, are what are your next inspired action items to move your business forward? And this is important because remember, we can get paralyzed. So it's important for you to chunk it down. And like Kathy was talking about, the SMART goals, that you begin to look, is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it really relevant to what you're doing? And is it time bound so that somebody's owning it? So in one moment, I'm going to ask you to actually share that in the chat, but not yet. I want you to consider, what is something that if you didn't move it forward over the next week, that you could possibly leave your company at risk of staying stuck or obsolete? So begin to think about, what is that one action item that you can begin to take? I'm not asking you, do you know how to do it? I'm asking you, what is that one item? Because you will figure out how to do it. And in just one moment, I'm going to ask people to put that in the chat line. And I want you to reflect on the fact that you might be able to use that in your own business. So please put that in, just briefly put in the chat what it is that you are willing to do over the next week to move your business forward. And I'm going to find the chat so we can begin to mention a few of them. Kathy, I'm struggling to find the chat right now. Is on the Q&A page. So if you wouldn't mind reading through some of them.
We don't
got none yet.
Yeah, we don't have any responses quite yet.
There we go. We have this thing where we can't all talk at once, apparently, as panelists, so we apologize for that. So begin to either write down or to share with the group, what is that inspired action? And the last thing I want to leave you with is this, is that without asking ourselves who we get to be in this time, then we're going to possibly leave ourselves in an area of paralysis. So I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to give too much of the detail, but what I know is that I was working with a group, and we began to realize that if we are vulnerable, passionate, connected leaders, that we can do miracles. And so I'm asking you, who do you get to be during this time? Is it courageous? Is it passionate? Is it connected? And if you can move it to the next. In order to thrive and survive during these times, is really, this is just the summary, is to acknowledge what your needs are, and your clients' needs, I would say, and where you are in the process. Be gentle with yourself, have compassion for yourself and others. Balance your thinking mind so that you can begin. Oh, great. So people are beginning to bring things in, and I'll reflect those in just a moment. So balance your thinking. Begin to come into present moment awareness and breathe, basically. And then create a plan from that space of being able to be creative. And let go of what you can't control and really control what you can, which is taking an inspired action plan where you can to meet your client's needs. Can you bring it to the next one? And so during this short time that we've had together, I mean, it's a quick drive, right? To be able to sail into the future, to be able to activate your sense of ability to thrive and survive during COVID times. And I would contend that these are skills that you can use for a lifetime in your business. So if you feel like you need some greater, let's call it clarity about what some of your next steps are, I would encourage you to contact me. My contact information is here. Send me a quick text. Let me know that you would like to have, I've created a business survival toolkit. It has some of these components in it, but it's a deeper dive into some of the work that we've been doing today. And also, I'm gifting each one of you. I have, well, I can tell you that I have set aside time for 5 conversations over the next week where we have a half an hour over the telephone conversation, and we begin to pivot your plan so that you can have a greater sense of clarity in this interesting time, so that you can sail into the future rather than gripping a hold and being so nervous about it. So I just want to say, I'm going to share with you some of the chats that have been coming through. These are the action items. Is to provide music to parties. Okay, so that's going to be interesting to see how we do that online. Manuel, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. I've heard Airbnb house. I'll learn more about disinfecting for COVID and figure out how to market that better. Okay, and then number 2, figure out how to have more long-term renters, visiting nurses, business execs. Right, I've used Furnished Finders to do that before. And what I would encourage you is that if you have one of these action items that you want to do and you don't know how to go about doing it, reach out. Kathy's here, I'm here, you have your community here. And I just want to say thank you for, I think we have a little bit of time for Q&A. And I just want to say thanks to you, to each and every one of you, for taking the time to be here today and to share with us your brilliance. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carrie and Kathy. So for those of you that are here joining us today, if you'd like to ask Kathy and Carrie your questions, please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask anything you want, and I'll be happy to respond as best as I can. So we'll give you a minute to type out your questions and get right back to you.
I actually do have a question. There was one question that came across, something about human resources. So if that person can say a little bit more about what it is that they're looking for in the Q&A, that'd be awesome. I'm gonna put myself on. Okay, so there's the question. Somebody knows I speak Spanish, and so they're saying that they would like some assistance with me sharing some of this information in Spanish. We'll talk, Letty. I appreciate that request.
Well, and the HR question was from Letty. We know each other. She was in some of my classes at Cuesta, and there's some concern about setting up her business to be safe for her customers and her employees. And so, Letty, we can talk about that. But I think I go back to what I said before. You really need to go to the source. OSHA and the the Center for Disease Control, they have very clear guidance. So you don't want to just pick something that some blog somebody wrote somewhere. Go to the source of information. Cal Chamber also has a lot of information. The good news is so much of this HR information that is related to COVID-19, people are providing the information for free. And there's lots of information in Spanish as well. And I believe that, Gina, the Chambers of Commerce are also providing a lot of information. And I'll just one more resource, Gina, and then I think if you can share more about what the chambers provide. But be sure that if you have business insurance, which everyone should, go to your insurance provider. So, I mean, I'll just put a little plug in. I'm with Morris & Garitano, and they are right on top of it. They've had weekly webinars. They've reached out to each of their clients to provide information at this time. They have Louise Matheny, very, very well-known HR professional. She's the person I go for to guidance. So does everybody else. And so if you're with Morris & Garitano, you can pick up the phone and talk to Louise. So just make sure that any vendors you have are really, truly in support of you at this time. You're paying a lot for things like insurance, and they should be giving you some services, particularly now. But again, the chambers are excellent resources for this as well, but go to the source like that. So Gina, maybe you can share what the resources of the chamber.
Sure, and one of the things actually, referring to Morris & Garitano, they actually have a weekly webinar that they are hosting as well, where you can ask your questions. I believe it's Thursday at 11, but that's off the top of my head. So we've been pushing that information out to our membership. I know it's one more place, but it's open to anybody and everybody. So whether you're a client or not, you are able to definitely utilize their services, and you can speak with Louise. She's on those calls and get the information that you're looking for in regards to HR. We also
10:30 on Thursdays. I'll put it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And so we actually have pasostrong.org is the website that the chamber has developed in response to COVID-19. It is full of resources, including the CDC and other, statewide and national websites that can help you with those types of things. But we also really highly suggest, and you can access this through the pasostrong.org, is readyslo.org. And that's that's San Luis Obispo County. They have put together this website, readyslo.org. And I did want to touch towards the end of the call, which we're there now, that we want you to know that the chamber is working very, very closely with the county, as well as our city officials, to make sure that we're putting together a recovery plan, so that we're ensuring that before everybody's expected to go back into the workforce and open their doors, we have all of the tools and resources that we need. So please know that before anything changes, there will be more and more resources made available to you, absolutely.
So Kathy put into the chat here, Morris & Garitano's weekly webinar is on Thursdays at 10:30. Forging a path.
And I'm pulling up there.
So I'm just saying, we're here for another 10 minutes. Are there any other questions?
Carrie, there was a question regarding the Airbnbs. She's asking, when your business is so tied into the hospitality sector, how do you pivot?
If I understand, she's doing Airbnbs. These are her own Airbnbs? I'm not.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm imagining that, I mean, we could create her own individual program. What I've been doing is I've been running masterminds, and we do group think to figure out what are some of the next steps that you can use moving forward. But off the top of my head, and I'm willing to hear what others have to say, like in the chat section, is I'm imagining that you can begin to create services or a place to stay for those who are nurses, doctors, those that need to be in this area for a period of time to address the COVID needs. I'm sure there's other things that I haven't thought about. And if you're wanting to have a further conversation. Oh, good. And Paso strong. Yeah. And if there's anybody else that has some other thoughts that she might be able to pivot the hospitality, then would love to hear it. So we can talk offline and begin to brainstorm around that. Once I understand your business better, I think that would be helpful. So you can contact me at 805-305-9255. Sometimes it's just a matter.
And I'm sorry, Carrie. Go on.
I was just going to say, sometimes it's just a matter of putting you in touch with others who are, let's call it, way showers in this area. So I'm going to let Kathy speak.
Well, I have several hospitality clients with hotels in the area, and until really the occupancy begins to improve, people feel more comfortable. This has to do with trust. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if you're wanting to really get out there again, communicating somehow the kind of sanitation measures that you're taking would be very important. And being patient, because this is about building trust and having people feel like they can travel again. But it would be imperative that you follow the CDC and OSHA guidelines for how to keep places clean, because the worst case scenario, you open up your place and then someone gets sick within the next 14 days and they say it happened at your property. How could you prove that it didn't? So this is the burden that employers are going to have. And I mean, I don't want to be the doomsdayer, but I've seen everything in HR. And so if someone comes and gets sick, they could have gotten sick anywhere, but they're going to try to find somebody with a little bit of money to help them pay their medical bills. And so again, how could you prove that they did not get it at your location? So you want to, I would kind of wait until, trust gets back a little bit. The hotel clients I have, this is the time they're doing deep cleaning. They're repainting everything. They're renovating everything. They're getting ready for when the demand comes back. Carrie, you were going to say something.
I'm actually going to say two things. So one of the things that some of my clients are doing also is they're using this as an opportunity to renovate their properties, so that when COVID does, when the restrictions do lift, that they can actually be in an upgraded site. But I'm going to link back to what you were talking about, Kathy, is that we really need to be aware of the fact that people are going to be uber, let's call it, they're looking for that saber-tooth tiger. So you're going to need to be addressing their health and safety issues. There were a couple things that came through here, and it says the chamber marketing here, we're hosting a roundtable discussion for the Paso hospitality sector. So if you would email me to send that link to the Zoom meeting. So you can contact them, I guess, marketing@PasoRoblesChamber.com. And then there was also Gina that was saying there's this Be Well Paso link as well. So is the Be Well Paso link for the hospitality?
No, that's actually a link that talks about activities that you can do while you're in shelter in place. And it has a lot of tools and resources for anxiety, a lot of what we talked about today. So I strongly encourage everybody to access that website as well. Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, any more questions coming through, I believe everybody had the opportunity to write down Kathy and Carrie's contact information. Please feel free to reach out to them. I want to say thank you one more time to you, Kathy, and you, Carrie. Thank you both very, very much. And thank you to everybody that's joined us today, all of the participants. It's been very informative, and I actually learned a lot as far as the Chamber is concerned. So we'll all move forward together, and I think that that's the biggest message that really needs to be pushed out. Kathy and Carrie, I'll let you do a final farewell as well, but to me, that's the number one piece of it, is that we're all in this together, and we will all get through this together. Thank you. Kathy, would you like to go? Oh, Carrie's unmuted. So
we were both
like
waiting for the other one. You go.
Yeah, I just have to say, what I love what you're saying is that we're all in this together. Remember how I was saying is it's important for us to have compassion for ourselves and compassion for each other. I would think if anything that we're learning from this time is that together we can rise up and that we can find answers to any problem we might have. It's just a matter of asking for what we need. So that's the parting thing I want to leave.
Well, and it's just my pleasure to connect with the city that I love so much. Paso is strong. Paso is resilient. We did very well during the recession. There are some trends that will move in the right direction once we get to a point where people feel like they trust traveling. They'll come to beautiful Paso Robles. Our city will thrive. And you guys are all on the right path, connecting with the resources that the Chamber provides. And it truly was my honor to be with you here today. Thank you so much, Gina and Shanae, for reaching out, for all the background help, and for Carrie, what a pleasure to work with you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you all. There is one more comment from Manuel. He says, I signed up for the roundtable, but have not yet received the Zoom link. Is that going out? So I guess what I'm going to say is, if they don't answer promptly here, is to link back to the past marketing at PasoRoblesChamber.com so that you can get that information. And I just want to say thank you again to each one of you for participating today with your questions and with your inspiration. I appreciate working with you, Kathy, and really appreciate Paso Robles Chamber asking us to speak.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Be well, stay well. We look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.